But also, events like this week, I think, are a great reminder of why we have made such an important investment in preparing first responders. I had the privilege of having you visit the Center for Domestic Preparedness, as well as former Chairman King has been there, and seeing that facility, which trains the first responders from all over the world who have been there for the folks in Boston this week and as well in Texas today. And also the hospital personnel. As you saw, that facility there to train for mass casualties is state-of-the-art, and that has been a wise investment by the department, and I appreciate it. And weeks like this are sad, but it's a good reminder to us why we make those investments, so those are appreciated. One of the concerns I've got is the DHS is in their Science and Technology Department over the last several years has made a significant investment in advanced explosive detection canine research out in Texas at Lackland Air Force Base. And that program was shuttered at the end of last year by Administrator Pistol. Very disappointed about that because, as you know, I know you're a big supporter of the explosive detection canine activities and its ability to protect us not only in airports, but in events like Boston, if we had them there, sweeping that area. And by closing that only breeding and genetic research facility, which was doing some cutting-edge work, we now are at the mercy of the private market. Can you tell me why that was closed, and given that it was closed, do you intend to at least contract with some folks to do that kind of research and breeding so that we can produce our own assets here domestically and not be subject to world markets for those core assets that we then train up?
If I might, Congressman, as you know, you and I are both big fans of canines and their capabilities, recognizing that they are not the only answer in these situations.
That's part of the layers.
My understanding is we do intend to follow up on that research in another way, but if I might give you some separate information about that, I think it would be more useful to you.
I would appreciate that. I think that research is pretty important because, as I've seen in the last several years that I've been really focused on this, we've come a long way in what their capability is.
On to the budget, this pressure cooker IED has really gained a lot of attention. For the first time, Americans sort of know what that is. We've known about it for quite some time. Inspire magazine essentially instructs you how to make a bomb. In fact, an article, How to Make a Bomb in the Kitchen of Your Mom. Can you tell me what the department is doing in its budget and to prevent this occurrence from happening in the future?
It's difficult, Mr. Chairman. Instructions on how to make simple IEDs or even more complex ones are commonly available through Inspire, through things like the Anarchist Cookbook, on the internet generally. And so we run into the issue of speech, writings versus actual activities. One of the things we've been doing is through the Office of Bombing Prevention. We actually now have a joint program office with DoD in terms of combining our efforts to improve the capability to detect something before there's an explosion, although that's very difficult. We also, through the Directorate on Science and Technology, are doing some, I think, very interesting research that down the road may result in some positive developments. But right now, as your question, I think, presupposes, there is commonly available recipes for making various kinds of IEDs, including those made with pressure cookers.
Let me just, I've said from the beginning, we can't reach to conclusions. At this point in time, we do not know whether this is a foreign terrorist plot or a domestic terrorist plot.
Right now, we cannot say one way or the other.
Yeah. You mentioned the Bomb Prevention Fund, and that's important because the Office of Bombing Prevention leads the department's efforts to implement the national policy for countering IED devices, responsible for the tripwire IED information sharing network for bombing squads, law enforcement, and the like. And my concern about the budget is that in your budget, you have decreased it by 8%, and overall, over time, it seems like every year it's gone down and had a decrease. In light of the Boston bombings, would you reconsider this budget request?
We're obviously able to do that. I think two points. One is, if you look at the budget, one of the things we've done is convert some of the in-person training to online training. That saves a lot of cost. As I also mentioned, we've begun participation in a joint program office with DOD, state, I think Justice, and that helps mitigate costs as well. And then some of the bombing prevention work you will also find embodied in the research being done in the Science and Technology Directorate.
My question is, I mean, it's decreased over the years. Some say 45%, 8% in this budget. I mean, in light of the bombings, when do you reconsider that request?
We will take a look and make sure that it's properly resourced, yes, sir.
My understanding is you did request, did the OMB deny your request for additional funding on this?
There's a lot of exchange between the department and OMB, but I will go back and look at this, yes.
Okay. Last question.
I have three questions. I'll ask them up front and then just let you answer them as you do. And they all basically come from Boston. The question of jamming technology. I think the use of IEDs in Boston demonstrates that this could be the weapon of choice for terrorists, whether foreign or domestic, in the future. I know last year we had two subcommittees. I believe Chairman McCall's subcommittee was one of them, which held hearings into the use of jammers to stop these IEDs, at least remote control. Now, whether these turn out to be remote control or not, if you can tell us the extent you can in a public setting what progress we've made as far as jamming and what cooperation there can be between the military and civilian. First question. Second question is, I see something, say something. I agree with you. I think it serves a real purpose that began in New York with the Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Did.
The only real purpose that began in New York with the Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Did.
The only real criticism I've heard, and it's really a question, is that different localities and states, some of them use complex email addresses and phone numbers. Is there any way that the federal government can urge them to use like a basic 911 or something which makes it easier so that in times of crisis it can be used? And then thirdly, I think it's general consensus that there was no federal intelligence, at least as of now. There was no chatter, there was no intelligence out there indicating that something was going to happen. And it would seem to me that as we are getting a much better hold on Al-Qaeda from overseas, or terrorist groups, foreign and domestic, are getting more sophisticated, that really the federal role in intelligence, as important it is, we also need an important local role. And do you believe there's enough funding in the budget, for instance, for something like the Boston Police Department or other police departments to start building up more local intelligence as far as it involves terrorism? Because what we use in the prior, using chatter, using federal intel, may not be sufficient in the future. And with that, I look forward to your questions.
On the jamming question, there's one of the key differences between military use of jamming equipment and using it in a domestic civilian environment is it's difficult to jam only bad stuff. So you end up interfering with signals more generally in a civilian environment. So there were two early pilots, I think in, I want to say 06 and 07 in the department to look at whether that anti-jamming technology used in theater could be used in a civilian way. They were not successful, but I don't know whether there is any current or new research being done in that regard. Exactly, and again, as you say, we don't know whether or not this was remotely detonated. With respect to CSA, we encourage state and locals who are part of the program and religious organizations and others to tie into a simple line. The majority use either 911 or whatever the tip line is for that particular department. But I think your point is well taken, because we want it to be as simple and memorable as we can. And excuse me, the third question was, the intel.
That was on the intel, yeah.
The intel.
We're using local intel.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, and in part because we don't know whether this was domestic or international. particularly where domestic is concerned. I think there's a particularly valuable role for intelligence that is collected and analyzed at the local level. So irrespective of Boston, this is something that we have been and want to look at. We're using the fusion centers and hope to build the capacity there in this regard. The Boston Fusion Center turns out to be one of the strongest ones in the country. We've been using them the last couple of days as a way to exchange information. But your point is well taken.
I also have my own parochial bias in that, in view of the fact the NYPD has 1,000 cops going out seeking intelligence, despite the fact they get unfairly attacked by the New York Times, the Associated Press. With that, I yield back.
Nicely done.